a company has to have a purpose that goes beyond just financial results, so that it kind of inclusive of all stakeholders, right? And I think people understand companies have to make money to survive, and employees and everybody understands. But then that doesn't, get them out of the bed, right? I mean, it wins their minds, but not the hearts, right? So what we want is a purpose that really, wins the hearts of our employees. They feel like they're part of something bigger.
The Energy Transition Podcast takes you directly to the cutting edge of the global energy sector's shift, with a specific focus on the critical role played by oil and gas, as well as the pathways developing around a lower carbon future. Your hosts, Leslie Beyer, Energy Workforce and Technology Council's CEO, and Dan Pickering, founder of Pickering Energy Partners, are joined by Josh Lowrey, president of Upright Digital. Each episode engages industry thought leaders in an exploration of market-moving trends and topics, including new technologies, ESG, capital markets, inclusion and diversity, workforce innovation, regulatory influences, and the voice of the people. Join us as the Energy Transition Podcast looks at the state of the traditional energy and oil field service sectors, emerging technologies, and the path ahead in a world of lower carbon energy development.
Welcome to the Energy and Transition Podcasts. My name is Josh Lowrey. I am one of your hosts today. I am joined by the co-host extraordinaire, Miss Leslie Beyer. We are in the Flecha Azul podcast studio, and this is actually one of our first episodes that we've done together.
That's right.
Yes, in the show without Dan Pickering, our other glorious co-host. How are you doing?
I'm great. I love the new chairs.
Yeah.
I don't feel as much like I'm in an airline cockpit, but that's all right.
Yeah.
Like,
these chairs were bought specifically for you.
Were they?
Yes.
I love to hear that.
So I'm from all boys. And so I bought those airline chairs. They're the awesome Restoration Hardware style aviation chairs.
Yes.
And I thought they were great, which they are great. But then coming from all boys, you don't realize that girls don't like to sit that low. And and you said, Josh, these are terrible if you're in a dress. And I said, that's something you just don't realize if you're a boy. And
I'm glad I could bring that perspective to the podcast.
I'm not kidding. I needed that perspective. That's something we did. And so when we bought these, we were kind of going through the design, and I kept saying, what would Leslie like here? How would this go? So no, these chairs are specifically bought with you in mind.
I like them even better now. Thank you.
That puts me even in better mood. All right, this show's off to a big win today. But how have you been?
I'm good. I just got back from Oklahoma City yesterday, doing some stuff out with Continental. And so just travel continues.
See, these intros are so hard to do. There's so many things you have to do. I forgot, our audience knows this, but just in case, you are the president and CEO of Energy Workforce and Technology Committee, formerly known as PISA, for those
Correct.
that don't know this. So you've been busy. The first half of the year is your busy time.
It really is. It's cyclical, I think, because people that engage with us, our members, really do that kind of in the spring and the fall. In the summers and in the holidays, it's, folks are kind of pulling back, taking time. They don't have a lot of extra time to spend on advocacy type initiatives, and that's primarily what we do. But we're doing it year-round, advocating on behalf of the energy services sector.
So before we get to our guests, we're going to do a quick plug for EWTC. What is your website that people can go check that out?
It's energyworkforce.org.
Okay.
We do a ton of advocacy and government affairs for all companies in the energy services sector, including ChampionX, that we're so excited to talk about today.
Look at that lead in.
And we do a ton of workforce development as well. So hopefully we'll talk a little bit about that. Y'all have been such a strong supporter of those programs. So a lot for the energy supply chain, and very focused on what the energy services sector role is in energy transition, which is why it's so exciting to have Soma come talk to us today.
Well, on that note, welcome.
Thank you, Josh. Happy to be here. I was just enjoying your conversation. I hope you will ignore me for a longer period,
Well, it's an awkward thing to do this, but it is a fun thing. This is the whole setup of the podcast. It's designed as we want people to come in and be comfortable and to tell great stories about their companies, the industry, and ultimately we want whether friend or foe, when they're here, this is a place where ideas get shared. People are comfortable to tell what's good, what's bad, what can we work on, and Leslie, I've known Leslie. When did you take over?
It's been about 8 years.
8 years.
Wow.
And I mean, so you've been involved for a long time too. She's revamped that entire organization.
Oh, she's done a great job, under her leadership. The kind of a pivot the organization has made, and the role, Leslie, you played. And more importantly, I would say that, the type of things the organization is doing now is really what the industry needs. So thanks for your leadership. And Josh,
Thank you so much.
You've been an integral part of this industry in many ways, really bringing new technologies and digital marketings and helping us, spread the word as well. So thank you.
I have
great.
great respect for you, and I appreciate that. Let's do a quick intro before I make him compliment me for 10 more minutes, because I could just stay on this for a while.
That was a nice and genuine compliment. That was very true.
It was great.
So our guest today, we're so pleased to have Soma Somasundaram. He's President and Chief Executive Officer at ChampionX, and he also sits on the company's board of directors. Prior to Apergy's merger with ChampionX, he was the Apergy President and CEO, as well as a member of that board. Before his role at Apergy, which was created in a spinoff from Dover Corporation in 2018, Soma was Vice President at Dover and President and CEO of Dover Energy, and he held several other senior leadership roles there. I know you've been in the oilfield services sector for a very long time, Soma, and your leadership is extraordinary. So thanks for being here today.
Well, glad to be here, and happy to be part of this.
Before we get into this, and I really wasn't going to ask this question, but I'm aware of those changes in those different companies. That's a lot in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a minute just to kind of describe what maybe the last 5 years have looked like? I know there's a whole part of your career that you could probably go into, but that feels like a whole lot in 5 years.
It's extraordinary amount of changes, right? And I wish I can say that I planned all that out, but the reality is, there's only so much you can plan, and then as industry evolves and things evolve, you have to adapt and quickly change with it, right? So it's funny, when I had our employees town hall after the merger, right, and that was in June 2020, the latest merger we did. One of the employees asked me the question, so Soma, 2018 was a spin year, 2019 you announced a merger, so what's in store for 2020? I think there's two messages there. Number one is, okay, what else are you planning to do? And number two is, hey, this is a lot of change, right? And so to your point, it's been a tremendous amount of change. But I would say, Josh, that it's all been a positive change, and I'm so grateful to my team and the entire organization, and how remarkably they have kind of supported that. And then very well that what the world has gone through in the last 2 years, and to be able to do all this in a pandemic world and virtual environment has been extraordinary, and I give a lot of credit to our employees and the strong culture we have, and I'm so grateful. That
must have been really difficult to manage all that change. You had really just completed it and then went into the pandemic environment.
That's right. We announced the merger, if you think about it, in 2019. In December of 2019 we announced the merger. And these large mergers take time to complete and close, and the world changed in February of 2020, and we had to completely do this virtually. And when you're bringing two large organizations and trying to do this virtually, and we actually closed the merger on June 2020 virtually, and we couldn't even bring the teams together because of all the COVID restrictions and everything we had. So it's been extraordinary.
The worst timing right there.
Right.
June of 20.
June was tough. And in a merger, the thing that matters is trust and being able to look at people in the eyeballs. And I can only imagine how challenging that was.
Well, and go back and think about your revenues of June 2020. Nothing was going on in June of 20.
Right. No, that's exactly right. We had the merger to think through, and then the revenues were plummeting because of the whole, we all remember the famous negative oil price in March, right? And then the organization is up in arms, right? Because everybody is wondering, because we as a company, like many companies, in the oil field industry and or even the industrial world has never worked as an organization remotely. And I have to be honest, I wasn't sure whether we would be able to effectively work remotely. But the power of human potential really comes through during these times, right? It's just amazing, when I look back at it, and I had my doubts of whether we will, get through this, and effectively. But boy, the human potential shines. And that's one of the reasons we always pivot on our culture, lean on our culture, because it really helps you in the difficult times. Yeah.
And that's leadership. And you talk so much about I know it's an important part of your leadership style to talk about culture and how important that is. And that is, I think, where I see a lot of companies in the energy services space that's even a part of ESG. Everyone is focused on that. How do you look at culture? I mean, primarily first, like in the merger and all of that environment, and then post-COVID, how do you maintain your strong culture through all of that?
Yeah, I mean it's a great question, Leslie, and it's a lot of leadership work, and when I think about these things, right, it's based on, I would say, about 3 convictions, right. First and foremost is that a company has to have a purpose that goes beyond just financial results, so that it kind of inclusive of all stakeholders, right? And I think people understand companies have to make money to survive, and employees and everybody understands. But then that doesn't, get them out of the bed, right? I mean, it wins their minds, but not the hearts, right? So what we want is a purpose that really, wins the hearts of our employees. They feel like they're part of something bigger. So that's what so our first conviction is based on the fact that, that we have to have a purpose that is bigger. And that's why we chose the purpose of improving lives. And working in an energy industry, it's amazing how it resonates with people every day, improving lives of people, right? So then the second conviction is around that positive culture is the only sustainable competitive advantage a company can have, right? Because everything else people can copy. Technology can be copied. If you have the best supply chain, somebody can do better. If you are paying the best in the industry, somebody can come and pay you even more. But we all know, culture is a kind of a tapestry, nicely woven tapestry, right? So you have to be, so you start. It doesn't. You can't just pull on one thread. You have to create that tapestry, right? So that's the second thing. So that's the second conviction we have. So which means we focus on it because it's a sustainable competitive advantage. The third reason we focus on it is, we always believe that the leaders get the culture they deserve. So which means it's a leadership work. The culture of an organization is a reflection of the leadership, right? So these are the 3 things. And we use a principle, we call it internally as, culture by design. Because sometimes people think about culture as you want to create a culture, right? But then how do you create a culture, right? Culture is an artifact, right? So we believe in a principle, we call it culture by design, where everything starts with experiences, right? So if you give positive experiences to people, that creates a belief system with people, that their experiences creates a belief system, and that belief system then translates into good behaviors, right? And then those behaviors, we call it as an artifact, which is a culture. So we always say, if you want a positive culture, good culture, start with giving good experiences to people, the employees. So that's how we start doing those. So every day, that's leadership work. We talk in the executive committee, we talk about culture elements, and we do engagement surveys. We encourage people to speak openly. I have a pipeline to CEO where employees can email me directly, and every week I get 3 or 4 emails where I respond to those emails, and they can bring any topic that's happening in the company, right? And we post those across. So try to create this kind of a positive experiences where people can feel that, that the environment is collaborative, the environment is transparent. So that's kind of where it starts.
These this Energy and Transition podcast can be a lot of different things. It can be highly technical, as we were talking. I don't remember if it was on air or off air. It can be people oriented, because Leslie has Maria here. She's off camera, and we were talking just about the people aspect and what workforce is necessary. So that's what's really great about this particular topic of Energy in Transition podcast. But as I'm listening to you talk, and really the notes that are prepared are extensive, and there's a lot of topics that we're going to talk about here. But I always tell people the best part about a podcast is it's very, I'm sure, you mentioned the pipeline to the CEO, but there's a lot of your employees that aren't going to get 45 minutes with you at a lunch or a coffee or whatever. And they're going to hear, and they read an email and they get the response, or they go to the town hall. But this is a unique moment to hear you talk like this, and it's encouraging for me. And when I heard you say leadership get the culture they deserve, I don't know about you, Leslie, that kind of just smacked me in the face a little bit, because that is what a great comment on, it's you are getting what you put out there. If you expect this, or you do X, Y, or Z, you're going to get back whatever you're doing. And you can't have excellence if you're not excellent yourself.
Right.
And I think what a great comment and commentary on leading such a large organization. So, I'm going to keep talking one more second here, but I love the fact that, like, these are the stories that I wonder how many people listening that don't know much about oil and gas, energy, et cetera, would ever say that an oilfield services CEO cares this much about their people, right? It's not just profits. It's not just this. It's no, we're going to care about the people, and then we're going to care about the other stuff that comes with it.
Well, I agree. And I think in oilfield services, it's so competitive, so incredibly competitive. And so when you mentioned the second conviction of positive culture is the only sustainable competitive advantage, that really resonated with me. Anybody could come along and pay your people more.
Right.
It happens all the time, and especially with the workforce situations that we're seeing right now, and labor shortages, and our kind of inability to really attract and retain a new younger workforce.
Absolutely.
That's what's
Absolutely.
so important.
Absolutely.
People will, it's interesting for me to see, because I have a little bit in my day job, the visibility into a number of different companies, and the ones that have high turnover and the ones that don't, you can tell.
Right.
And sometimes people will leave for a few dollars more an hour,
Right.
but not if they feel like they're part of something
Right.
greater, and that they believe in this idea too of improving lives.
Right.
And that's something we spend a lot of time talking about. And I think that's the important thing about energy transition. And you're one of those leaders that isn't afraid to say that phrase.
Right.
I know a lot of people are like, I don't want to use that phrase.
Right.
And we can hem and haw over that. But to embrace it and say, we're improving lives.
Right.
How do you talk to your team about that?
Yeah, no, I think it's Leslie, I've listened to you say, energy transition does not mean transitioning away from oil and gas, right? It's, you always say that, and that so much resonates with me, because it's about energy transition of us doing it together, right? And, we have all seen the recent events, and things have kind of shown, right, how important the oil and gas energy
Yes.
is for the world, because we got, energy security is important, affordable, reliable, and responsible energy is really, really important to the world.
It is.
And so the recent events is showing that, right? So we have a huge part to play in this. And if I can take a minute to go back to the pandemic, look at what our energy industry or oil and gas industry was doing. I mean, we have 7,000 people around the world. I'm so grateful to them, because 65% of them in our company did not have the choice to work remotely.
Wow.
Right? Because they work in field,
In the
they are
shop floor.
in the shop floor, in the manufacturing environment. So day in, day out, they have to go out there and do the work they do, so that the world can continue to have, think about hospitals running. Where does that energy come from, right? So it's just, and that story doesn't get told.
No.
How important, and every day I'm grateful for them, because if they had not done what they're supposed to do, I don't know how we would have gotten through the pandemic, right?
It's such an important
It's an important part of it, right? So there's a lot to be proud of what we do as an industry, right?
Yes.
There's a lot to be proud of what we do. So having said that, I think we also need to embrace, the responsibility of providing this energy, in an affordable and responsible and sustainable manner. And we have already started doing that. And look at the amount of commitments the industry has made and the moves they are making in this. And I can talk for hours about the technologies and the things that are being used in the industry today to continue to achieve that goal of affordable, reliable energy. And I'm also appreciative of the work your organization does, Leslie, in terms of different things, in everything from making sure that we provide the right cutting edge knowledge about ESG initiatives, providing the right kind of leadership development, making sure that that the oil field services that big and small all get that opportunity, right? So I think there's a lot to be proud of. So that's how we talk to the organization about it. Number one, that there's a lot to be proud of. The second we talk about it is all the innovations and things we do, right, today, if you look at it, is to reduce the carbon content. So we make the world efficient and enable a low carbon future, right? And there's a number of innovations in the industry, right? And a simple example, we just introduced what is called a high-rise pump, right? I mean, not to give a marketing spiel here, but I just want to give a point of innovation. It's a ESP pump, but it produces the same amount of volume with 20% less power. And we are not the only one who is doing it. Across the board, throughout the industry, all of the companies are innovating, right, to provide that responsible, energy. So our employees are very, proud of what we do because they understand that we provide responsible energy, which is important to drive the world. We got to balance protecting the planet and the prosperity of the global population, right? So we have a responsibility to support that, right? So I think, as you talk more and more like that to people, and they completely understand.
They do, and they get behind those innovations. I mean, I have watched at ChampionX, you all bring so much to the table in digitalization,
right.
In addition to those low carbon innovative technologies. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? When I think about ChampionX in my mind, I think about a company very focused on digital systems, digitalization of the oil field.
Yeah, no, I think it's an important enabler for the industry, to enable the low carbon future. Because if you think about all digital solutions, anything digital, it does two things, right? Number one, it drives productivity through convergence of information, through convergence of, various insights. So it drives productivity. And number two, it drives efficiencies of the assets, right? So when you think about, from a digital perspective, we kind of think about it, because it's a broad term and it's used widely. So we always think about in oil and gas, the way what enables digital is three things. Number one is, I would say, the economic value of the asset. So think about it as if there is a 10,000 oil barrels per day producing well, you want to make sure it's operating every minute in the most efficient manner because it's high economic value, high critical asset, right? Whereas if it is 10 barrels a day producing well, you may not need to have the same level of digitalization because the economic value of that asset is not high and things don't change that often, right? So that's number one, economic value of the asset. Second, we think about is the digital maturity of the organization themselves. Because when you think about companies, they're all in different, in a spectrum of digital continuity. On one end of the spectrum, you have enterprise digitizers. They are digitizing everything, right? From internal information all the way to how things work in the field. And then there are in the other end of the spectrum, there are organizations, I call them kind of unit digitizers. they'll say, look, I have a producing well, I just want to control that well. I'm not interested in all this end-to-end big digital type of thing. But there's a tendency normally when people talk about digital as if it's everything is always end-to-end. But it's a spectrum of things, right? So that's how we think about it. So what does that mean for the industry? We need to make sure our products are modular, right? So people can pick and choose what is, if they want the full stack of end-to-end, where I just want to sit down in my office and be able to see everything goes on in that 5,000 well sites I have, we have solutions for that, right? But that's not every customer, right? But then there are customers who will say, like I said, hey, just give me a simple controller. And so that it controls it. I would like to go there every week and I'll check on it. My comfort level is good with that. So I think we need to produce modular things. The other thing which is really, really important, and we always feel that, is because we need to make sure that the software and hardware in digital stays agnostic, because it's really important to provide that flexibility to the customers. So which means customers should be able to pick our hardware if they like ChampionX hardware, right? And if they like somebody else's software because they feel that's a better fit for them, they should be able to run that software on our hardware, right? So right from the beginning, we always adopted the technology, the principle of agnostic hardware and software, so that customers have the flexibility. And then lastly, I would say we really, really need to work on bringing down the cost of technology, because we all know when the cost of technology comes down, adoption goes up, right? So that's how we focus on as ChampionX. And I do really feel as an industry, right, I think if we continue to collaborate, because when I look at it, there is so much inefficiency in our industry, right, because of how things have evolved over a period of time.
Well, everybody thinks their widget's better.
Exactly, right? And so if we can, continue to evolve where we kind of put collaboration in front of us, which means we agree on data standards, we agree on, so our products communicate with each other, right? I think we can eliminate so much inefficiency. Sometimes when I talk to customers, you can tell, right? They say, well, they have internal groups. All they do is write middlewares so that different things can talk to each other. Right?
So, I mean, I feel if you go back to I always joke about the last downturn, but what is that really? Is it 1 year, 3 years, 7 years? Because I can pick maybe 3 in the last 7 years alone. Right. So pick your last downturn that you'd like to talk about. Those have caused the need for what you're describing, not only from a cost standpoint, like we've got to lower cost to be efficient, or that's not the right word, economical, but at the same time, are you seeing? There's also been the great crew change has happened.
Yep.
So there's this new workforce just by generationally seems open to communicating with each other differently than maybe other past generations have. Are you seeing that type of?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I can give you multiple examples of that, right? So let's start with a simple technology evolution which the employees bring to the table now, right? So we all remember, I remember going to a well site, 20 years ago, and we will have this controller there which will have this one green line. That's all you can see, right? So one green line of display. And so if you want to get to a function, you need to go through like 6 steps before you can get to that particular set point or a particular function, right? Today, we have 12-inch screens, right? Everything you need is a touch screen, right? And that evolution, if you look at it, came through when our employees, when you hire these new employees, they come and go, what's up with that?
I need a green line.
What is this?
Can I do it on my phone?
Yeah. Why can't I do it on my phone? They ask these questions so quickly and say, hey, and there is so much advancement of technology that has happened in the other industries, right? Which we can easily bring in and adopt. So that's an example of those, right? And then when you look at we recently launched our emissions platform, which is again another important commitment the industry is making, right? So and when you look at the emissions, and that's been an important source of attraction of talent, for us. And, just to deviate a little bit here, last week I was at our West Little York facility where we manufacture these units. And I was walking the floor and I was talking to the employees. And a couple of them had joined recently, 30 days ago. So I asked them, where were you working before and what attracted you to ChampionX, right? And going back to the things you talk about, they say, we looked at what ChampionX does, and this emissions things you do really resonates with us, right? Because we feel like we can be part of something that helps improve people's lives.
See, that blows my mind.
Right.
You're not getting that answer 20 years ago.
No, not when we were coming into the industry. I was like, I make some money.
I'm saying 20 years ago, and I'm really being nice, right? I mean, you could maybe say 5 years ago. Like, that to me feels like a monumental shift in a mindset of people trying to say, hey, that means that what we're talking about is working. And I don't mean, look, as you were talking a little bit ago, I kind of got quiet because I was very encouraged to hear what you were talking about on the reasons we're doing this and the reasons for this podcast. And what I really thought to myself, Leslie, was, and I'm going to just hijack this podcast for a second, is I think I might be the biggest winner of this entire podcast. And I'm serious, because I'm getting to hear both Leslie Beyer and the guests that she brings in, Dan Pickering and the guests that he brings in. And what I'm getting to hear, and I encourage everybody to listen to all the podcasts, because you're going to get to hear a lot of different takes and different levels of business, whether it's financial or oilfield services. But what you're going to hear, this common thread throughout the whole process, is everybody's aiming towards the same goal. And it's not energy transition, it's energy in transition, which we've been doing for 100 years. And energy transition is exactly the product, services, widgets, people, personnel, E&D. I mean, it's all of it, this thing that we're in the middle of. And as you're listening, it just all because it feels like we're living it right now.
And
it's incredible.
You're right. Absolutely.
It's great to hear you explain it to Soma the way you do, because I think for some companies in the space, they're like, digitalization is too much. It's a big behemoth. I'm not going to wrap my arms around that. But to hear you talk about it as something that can be modular, something that can be bespoke, for a company, they don't have to do the end-to-end digital life cycle.
Absolutely not.
They can just come along bit by bit, and to see that modeled and articulated in leadership, I think is very important.
Or a new employee saying, hey, we're going to be part of this change.
Right.
Like that, you're not hearing that 5 years ago.
Right.
It's incredible.
Right. And then, look, we all, as humans, as employees, we are also all different, right? I mean, look, when I look at my iPhone, right, I mean, I think probably I use like 20% of the functionality, right? I mean, I use it to make a call, I occasionally, check some things.
You're not TikToking on it?
Yeah, I'm not TikToking on it, or I'm not controlling my house with it. I'm not controlling my, but then I know people in our organization, they actually run the whole life with iPhone, right? How remarkable is that, right? But then, so just like, people are in a spectrum, right? So same thing in the organization. I always say, look, the first thing we have to ask is, what problem are we trying to solve? Because, we can all reflect and think about it, right? All the things we do in the organization, you really reflect on it, you'll suddenly find, oh my God, I don't even know why we do that. What problem is that trying to solve? Because I can tell you, and I'm sure, Josh, in your work, you come across this, that people come to you all the time in the organization and say, we should be doing this, we should be doing this, we should be doing this, right? I rarely have people come into my office saying, Soma, we should stop doing this, right? It's always more and more and more, right? And then you start thinking, okay, the first question when you ask them, okay, I know we should be doing that. Can you please explain to me what is the problem we are trying to solve? Then they start thinking, and why is that a problem, right? Because so I think it's same thing with digital, right? So in the organization, you can get overwhelmed if you suddenly say, I'm going to digitize everything. But there are things, you just need to understand where is I always tell people, look, let's work on the things that bugs you the most. Who wouldn't want to work on it, right? That's a great step for improvement. Ask people, let's work on the things that bugs you the most.
Well, that is such a leadership skill too. I know in my role even, and I know Josh experiences this certainly in marketing, especially in the digital marketing space. But for me in the trade association space, I've got 450 companies coming at me every day saying, I want you to do this and that and this and that. And I want to respond to that. But I will present to the board what I'm working on. And without fail, the board will ask me every single time, what are you pulling off? What are you taking off? We need to know what you are not, doing well.
Right.
So you can take that and move it to the side.
Right. And that's why I say the digital is a great enabler. We have a number of examples where you automate things and digital workflows and things like that. But they are all have to solve a particular problem and make people's life better, right? Digitization for the sake of digitization, everybody will be frustrated.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
It's the make people's life better part that really matters across everything.
Absolutely.
And we started with that. Improving lives is one of the first things you said, and I love that.
And there are a number of things that are going on in our industry in the digital space that is enabling, whether it is being able to monitor the wells remotely or whether you're able to predict the life of an operating asset, so that you don't have to shut down things until it's needed. The safety of the people, right? So they don't have to drive to the well site every day and spend all their time on the road, putting themselves at risk, as well as, the productivity associated with it, right? So I think the digitalization is a amazing enabling factor. I'll give you one more example, and then, how it helps. So, for example, if you have a North Sea platform or even a Gulf of Mexico deep water, right? So when there is a problem there, right, in the past, like in our case, right, we provide chemistry solutions and things like that, right, which is very critical for the ongoing production. So if there is a problem, if there's an upsetting conditions in the flow, and then you have a different chemistry issues, then you need to solve that quickly. Right. In the past, what used to happen is, you get the sample. We always have people on the platform, and they will send it over, and then you get on the phone. What it could take about 2 hours, but today with virtual reality and with HoloLenses, we have a big team center in Sugar Land, where it's a virtual center where people around the world can see when people get on that. Put on their HoloLens, they are real time seeing somebody standing in North Sea platform looking at what they are looking at. Our experts sitting here are seeing it. So you're real time solving the problem, right?
That is amazing to think about conceptually. I mean, my 2 teenage boys are virtual reality with the Oculus on in my house all the time. Yeah. We play this game called Drunken Bar Fight. It's very interesting. But that's the kind of thing they could get into.
Yep.
And we got to be talking about that more.
Right. And to Josh's point, the younger generation, brings all that type of, they ask those kind of questions and say, hey, why can't we use that technology? Right? So to your point, Josh, this is it's amazing. And this is the story that needs to get told as well. Because to your point, Leslie, that we need we have a lot to offer as an industry.
We have so much.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about this, and the old joke used to say that going to the bottom of the ocean was as difficult as going to space. And if you think I prepared these notes, you're crazy. I did. My notes are a blank sheet of paper and 3 espressos, and I'll just start screaming at you. And we'll figure it out. Leslie and her team, highly organized. They've got great questions, and one of them is on the digital space, scientific aviation. Speaking of space and all these new technologies, can you comment on that a little bit and what you guys have just expanded into that?
Yeah, I think part of our strategic priorities as a company is, how do we continue to evolve our portfolio, as part of this energy transition, and make sure that, we are staying relevant to the industry as well as to our customers, right? So, the merger we orchestrated is an important part of that, because if you look at today, our portfolio is about 85% production oriented.
Okay.
So that gives us, that long runway in the world. And the second aspect is we are now, our revenues are almost 50-50 U.S. versus outside of the U.S.
That's
I
impressive.
wondered. Yeah.
And that gives us a great opportunity of, regardless of how things evolve,
Hedged.
will always be relevant. And the same way with the sources of production, whether it is deep water, oil sands, shale, conventional energy, enhanced oil recovery. So we are exposed to all of those. And then we are exposed to all different types of customers, everybody from private operators all the way to NOCs and IOCs. So the merger was an important part of that. Then the next step, when we looked at as where would we evolve the portfolio, then we knew that the emissions, and particularly starting with methane emissions, is going to be really, really important to the industry. And it's a nascent industry in the upstream, because it's not very well understood, all the elements of what creates methane emissions and which assets in a well sites, which areas methane emissions happen. So we've been looking at saying, how can we play a role in it? Because our employees are there at the well site. We have over 3,000 employees. Every day they are visiting well sites, right? Whether it is a platform, offshore platform, or a well site in Permian, they are visiting every day. So we said, we have a role to play in helping in this emissions area. So that's what led to the acquisition of Scientific Aviation. It's a company that has that had the an ability, developed the sensors as well as analytical models to detect and measure methane emissions.
Okay.
So they do it having a plane, do a flyby with a plane, or run drones, or we also have continuous monitoring. So when you think about the priorities of particularly the industry, and more importantly all our customers, pretty much I would venture to say most of our customers have now committed to some type of emission reduction goals.
They have.
They have, right? So we have an important role to play to help that, and then converging that with the production operations. And that's what we do, is, our emissions portfolio with our digital platform starts converging together, and that's going to help our customers do that. And so that's again, important part of what I would call it, us producing the oil and gas energy responsibly.
Right. That is, I think, the thing to get back to is that because we will need oil and gas for so long, the technologies to develop it more cleanly, the methane emission reduction and detection, all of that, the low carbon tech, that's what a lot of it comes out of this industry. I've seen a colleague present all of maybe 75% of the green patents have come from the oil and gas industry.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary.
Right.
And so what we're developing to reduce emissions is so impressive, I think. And I love hearing all of that.
I'm pretty impressed with the 50-50 North America and global revenue split.
Right.
That is a impressive ability to do that. I didn't realize that. I mean, I apologize. I didn't realize that you guys were that. I knew you were big internationally, but what does that do to or I shouldn't say what does that do? What does the current global situation look like to you guys? I know you've just done earnings calls, so
right.
You're probably more open to speak now than maybe a week ago. But what does that look like now?
Yeah, I mean, just I'll tell you, it's tragic what's happening in Ukraine, right? So we hopefully, we pray that sometime peace comes back there pretty soon, and we are actively involved in helping the situation in few ways. We don't have actual employees in Ukraine, but we do have about 250 employees in Russia, and we have been in Russia for a long period of time, over 30 years, and we have multiple facilities, and so clearly, we are working with day in, day out, all the sanctions issues. It's about 1.5% of our revenues. So, but the people, we have had a committed team there, and we have a really good team in Russia, and they've been a committed employees for a long time. So we have been, working with all the sanctions at the same time, trying to make sure that, that we are supporting them within the sanction restrictions we have.
Yeah.
So that's been
the average employee is just literally caught up in this, just like every other.
It's been horrible, and we have so many employees there, the sector wide, and it's hard for companies to try and protect their employees and at the same time abide by the sanctions. And equipment has been a big issue in services there. Do you just walk away and leave your equipment? Does Gazprom take it over? That's, it's a very tough situation.
It's a very tough situation, and it actually is also creates. Multiple organizations needs to get involved to make sure, because these things are evolving fast as well, because every day there's a different type of sanction comes through. So clearly, we are working through that. What this again points to, I go back to the importance of the oil and gas industry and the importance of reliable, affordable, responsible energy. This goes to show, right, now geopolitically as well as the energy security is becoming so much more important, right? And I think my sincere hope is that there is a continued recognition of this, because we are all somewhat facing some of the underinvestment that has happened in the industry for a long period of time.
The industry, right? We were already in a bad way.
Bad way,
this
right?
started.
I mean, we were already stretched as an industry. So the underinvestments that has happened. So now, hopefully, there's more recognition. We need to make sure that we are incrementally investing. Look, we got to be responsible. We got to make sure that we are using the capital responsibly, right, and making sure that we are doing it right. But we do need to continue to invest in a manner that we can continue to provide the energy and the security of energy the world needs. And that's a huge responsibility when you think about it.
It requires investment. Are you seeing a little bit of a return? I feel like we are a little bit.
Yeah, I think there is capital discipline in the industry, and I personally feel that's a good thing for the industry, because I think it's really, really important our investors see that we as an industry can be responsible, good stewards of capital, right? I always say that the perception lags reality, right? So the perceptions of old downturns, still hangs on, right? And, even though the reality, the industry has shaped up into, we have better balance sheets now. We have all, very focused on making sure that we are deploying capital in a responsible manner. So I think we need to continue to do that. And we see the investor interest starting to come in, right? And we can see that.
Yes.
Right? If you go back and look at it, we were, 2.5% of S&P 500. Mm-hmm. Now we have gone up to 5-6% of S&P 500. So you can see the investors are starting to come back in, and I think that investments are continued needed. And the other thing we have to do as an industry is that's why I applaud what you're doing, Josh, you and Leslie, this podcast and all. We have to tell the story, right? And the other day, first time, maybe it's been going on for a while, I haven't seen it. First time I saw on TV an ad from an oil and from an oil and gas company. I think it's a midstream company that put an ad, which I thought was remarkable. The ad kind of shows common people using different products, right? Everything from their hair shampoos to their pills to the jacket they put on and all that. And then it shows if we don't exist, what will happen, all of those disappearing.
That might be Williams. That's an effective ad.
So I don't know which company is that, and I don't know, but I saw that for the first time.
And people don't realize that.
Yeah, to your point, people don't realize, what it takes for that, these products to be made, and how dependent all these products are on hydrocarbon, right? So I think we are an integral part of the world, and we are doing it more and more responsibly, right? I think that story needs to be told more and more. So incremental investments needs to happen, and we as an industry have the responsibility to make sure that we are doing the right things,
we do,
and then telling the story the right way, right? And we need to collaborate more as an industry.
Yes.
Right? We need to collaborate more as an industry, come together, and that's where trade organizations like yourselves play a huge role.
Well, and I go back to the biggest beneficiary of this podcast is going to be me and anybody who listens to all of them, because last week we had the director of energy and transition for NCAP was on, and I got an hour lesson in everything from solar fields to batteries. And as I was listening to this, you realize, like, not only are they incredibly cool technology and the investment is absolutely necessary, what they're doing, and they're going to provide a tremendous value for the energy use of what we're doing and where we're going. And then he tells you this whole story, and he's like, oh, by the way, we need a ton of oil and gas, and this is only a fraction of it, and this is only what we can do. But it's going to get better, but it's 20, 30 years away. So, the oil and gas people need to make sure that they're doing what you're talking about. And you realize that anybody who kind of fights this term of energy in transition or energy transition, and I know they're niche, but doesn't understand what we're actually talking about. Yeah. And the more that we keep talking about these stories, the better it is. And ultimately, it's a people game, which I know there's a lot of questions that we've asked you about people, because it's a matter of the people we serve, the people that we live next to, the people that we are trying to make their lives better, both internally, externally. And I think if everybody kind of realizes that that's actually what we're trying to do here, it's I think everybody gets on board with the collaboration, because you're not just talking about two corporations collaborating, although that's incredibly necessary. You are talking about industry organizations reaching across, from the subsea to the land, or the, whatever to the whatever, right? You need. My grandmother used to say, it's one of my best things I ever learned from my grandma. If you want friends, be friendly.
Yeah.
And that's real.
Right.
And if we've got to go out and say, hey, this is the story. Come with us and come be part of the story. So, I'm aware of your time. I could go Joe Rogan on this thing 3 hours. We'll talk all day long, but I know you are. So you just were recently, we saw you a couple weeks ago over at the annual Energy Workforce meeting. You were awarded the DEI Champion Award for the Energy Workforce and Technology Council, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Can you just give us an idea of what that means to you and your organization?
Yeah, Josh. First of all, I was really, really honored and to receive that award, and it was very meaningful to me because because I'm passionate about it, and B, it's a great recognition of all the efforts our employees are doing, right? In this area, right? And so when we look at as an organization, it's really, really important for us that it is an integral part of who we are as a company, right? And that's why we kind of integrate this into the way we think about our strategy as well as decision making. So what exactly does that mean? So which means everything you do in the organization, you need to also make sure you see through this lens of how you progress in that, right? For example, when you think about benefits, okay, are you thinking through the lens of the different background of people and making sure that the benefits we are offering is inclusive
to different kinds of things that people need, yeah.
Right? So that's an example of that. So when you think about recruitment, are we really focusing on making sure that you get a diverse slate of candidates, or you are always going to the comfort level you have? Because we as people, we tend to have natural biases. That's natural to people. We all work on getting ourselves educated and training and all that. So, but making sure that not just the slate of candidates, but also the interview panel we use, is it diverse enough to make sure that we are, bringing the right set of things. So these are the type of things we kind of integrate as part of it. Our compensation systems, how is that designed? Is that reflects the needs, right? And the Diversity and Inclusion Council, I chair that. And we make sure that we have a cross section of the organization have a voice on the table, right? In the everything from all our different ERGs are represented in the council, and so on and so forth. So I think it's an important element for us as an industry, because we all know different innovations come from, having diversity of thought and a diversity of experiences, right?
Exactly.
So it's critical for the competitiveness of the company. And equally important, it's important for us to attract talent, because scarcity of talent, I can tell you right after this, I'm going to go meet with I'm interviewing a candidate for head of marketing, in one of our divisions. And I just got a text before, hey, by the way, he already has 2 competitive offers.
Of course.
So no pressure, right?
Yeah.
So you got to somehow figure out we attract this talent.
Right.
So think about that, right?
It's hard. We're competing against other industries, certainly, for the great talent, and it's hard.
Right.
But having that diversity of thought, people having a voice and a seat at the table makes a difference.
Right. And I think, going back to, Josh, what you said about collaboration, right? This is another area, right? Because we are all learning in this area, right? How do we implement good practices? What is working, what is not working? We are learning. How amazing it is when we are really able to come and share. Hey, this is what we do. Mm-hmm. And then what does best looks like? Like the other day I was asking our Diversity and Inclusion Council. So because we have about now 1,500 unique members in our ERGs, right?
Wow.
So we have about 10 ERGs, okay? So we have, so I said, okay, so what is that good or bad? I don't know.
Because there's
right?
no real benchmark for it.
Correct. So what does good look like, right? Is it, so we are at 15%, less than 15%, on the organizational, and is it a good number, or should it be 35, 50? You would think that that's very small. So, you know what I mean? So these type of things, how to calibrate, what practices are working, what is not working. So there's a tremendous amount of collaboration that can go on in it. And I know EWTC is doing a job to bring people together. So these are the type of things, if we collaborate, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Each company doesn't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right. Well, with respect to your time, and I do want to, there's something that we jumped over at the beginning that, because I was talking about chairs, I apologize. I'm excited about these new chairs. But as you're talking there, and I'm listening to it, I read your bio. You graduated from University of Oklahoma. You're a Sooner.
Go Sooners.
But you're not from Oklahoma.
I'm not from Oklahoma.
So I'm curious, and maybe you can kind of let us wrap with this, if you don't mind. You didn't. There's a lot of stuff you're talking about that feels very to your core. You didn't. You may have read a lot of this, some of this in books, and you've tailored it over a career and a lifetime. But where did you learn this? Where did you learn that this is who I'm going to be? I just told you one of my biggest things I always tell: if you want friends, be friendly. I learned that from my grandmother, right? So where did you learn what you're describing that's clearly coming out over your lifetime that you're now implementing into your leadership style?
Yeah, no, Josh, you're exactly right. I can say that you read a lot of books. The books helps you crystallize some thoughts, right? But I always believe, as I subscribe to the principle of servant leadership, because I always believe it's a privilege to be a leader, and you have to earn that every day, right? And I believe in being sincere and authentic, right? Because people trust people whom they feel they are sincere and authentic, right? So that's just a little bit of how I think about leadership. Now, going back to your question, I would say, it's one of those things, like when you're growing up, I say, look, what did I learn in master's program? Actually, I kind of realized what I learned in the bachelor's. Right?
Crystallized.
It crystallized what I learned in bachelor's. So sometimes you go through life, and then when you start reflecting back, suddenly, that's where it came from, right? So actually growing up, I didn't realize my dad was my role model, until I got to a point where I became my first supervisory role, managing people, and I started thinking about how I am behaving and things like that, and I started reading and I say, wow, where did I learn this? And my dad, so my dad was a school teacher in a village in India for a long period of time. So I grew up early part of my life in that village with my and you know, in many developing worlds in the villages, right, you know, the kids, you know, go out to the field to help the families, right. My dad was so committed. First of all, he'll get up early in the morning and knock on the doors on the village to make sure that he grabs the kids before they go to the field so they can come to the school, or he will stay back, you know, late in the evening to help them learn, right?
When they get home.
And so just observing him, you know, the service mindedness, how helping other people, and I sincerely believe one of the reasons I'm doing well in my life, and I did okay in school, is because he was so dedicated in servicing and teaching those people and help them. You know, we all know, you help somebody get an education, you are changing the trajectory of the generation, right? So I think so that's how it comes from. That's where it comes from.
I love it.
That is such a beautiful story. Soma, we've been friends for a long time, and I've never heard you say that.
No, that's where it comes from.
That's
Excellent.
very beautiful.
Is your dad alive still?
No, he passed away in 1992.
Your mom is still.
My mom is still alive.
Yes.
She's healthy.
And she's seen your success and your family, and I'm sure she's very proud of you as well.
Yeah.
What a legacy!
Humbled.
What a legacy! I mean, your dad would be proud. I'm proud to know you. It really is incredible. This has been, what a guest, Leslie.
I know.
What a guest.
Soma, you're the first guest that I brought on to do
I've been sending Leslie some texts like, let's go, and she just hits a home run right out of the box here.
Thanks for having me.
No,
and,
Soma,
and thanks for all you do, both of you, for the industry. You know, we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for your leadership, and it's been great to have you today. And again, I'm so happy that Josh gets to wrap up with talking about what podcast we're in and what city.
Well, so is there anything else we need to finish with? I think we've just hit it. I'll wrap us up. Is there anything else you guys would like to say? No?
I just want to, again, just tell you how much we appreciate your leadership, both at the council and certainly sector-wide. And there are many leaders that look to you, Soma, and we're grateful to be able to work with you.
Well, thank you.
I'll second that. And on that note, then I'll tell you, anybody who has listened to this, we're going to put ChampionX's website up on the all of the links for anything you want to listen to on all of the podcast platforms, YouTube, etc. And at the same time, we're also going to put it up for the Energy Workforce, their website. You need to get involved in this Energy Workforce Technology Council. There's lots of stories like Soma, and I don't mean to minimize how great this one is, but that's the best part about what we're all doing. We're all trying to collaborate with ideas and people and energy, etc. And I don't mean just actual energy that powers the world. I mean human energy.
Absolutely.
So it has been a true pleasure. I think that's it. I could keep going, but it's only just to hear myself talk, which I love to do. So on that note, thank you guys for listening. Subscribe on your favorite podcast. UprightDigital.com holds all of the channels that we have, and we appreciate the support. Thank you guys very much.